Next on the news, remembering the victims of Haiti's deadly earthquake a dozen years later. The Diocese of Immigrants Haitian Apostolate praying for all those still trying to recover. New York Attorney General Letitia James says she will get to the bottom of why deadly fires keep happening in the northeast section of the Bronx. The Red Cross declares its first ever national blood crisis, citing the pandemic for a major decline in donations.
It's amazing. I use the term miracle lightly, but it is almost like a miracle.
A medical helicopter crashes in front of a church and everyone aboard, including a baby, miraculously survived. Plus, Pope Francis stops in a Rome record store. We'll tell you why he made this unannounced visit. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. A catastrophic event that changed a nation. 12 years ago, a 7.0 magnitude earthquake hit the island nation of Haiti, and the rippling after effects of that disaster can still be felt to this day. The Diocese of Immigrants Haitian Apostolate declaring this a day of remembrance, praying for the victims and the families who are still trying to recover more than a decade later. Currents News' Jessica Easthope talks with Haitians in Brooklyn who say this is an anniversary they won't soon forget.
In 30 seconds, an entire nation was changed forever. The aftershocks of an earthquake can last anywhere from minutes to weeks. But for Haitians across the globe, the aftershock of the 2010 earthquake has lasted 12 years.
This earthquake happened, and we've been shaking since.
Today, on the National Day of Remembrance, leaders in the Haitian Catholic community are reflecting on how the Diocese of Brooklyn took action to help.
The Church of Brooklyn is always present in the life of the Haitians, especially during those times of troubles.
But also the earthquake's power to destroy not only government buildings and cathedrals, but the country's infrastructure and society, giving way for corruption, political violence, and poverty.
We're living in a land of lawlessness. We're killing people. We're kidnapping priests and pastors and children and mothers and missionaries.
There is no order, no security, no peace. It's a result of the earthquake and the corruption.
This past year, the world watched as tens of thousands of Haitians fled to the U.S. border in Del Rio, Texas. The COVID-19 pandemic, political violence, and poverty again seeping into their new homes in South America. Many were deported, but for those who made it through, the reverberations of the 2010 earthquake followed them to another uncertainty.
They were no longer able to give us the same support they were giving us before. So there goes your mass exodus. They're not coming to wealthy.
Community leaders say today cannot be a day of remembrance because Haitians live January 12, 2010 every day.
We need to look at, the entire country and with all, to see how, what needs to be done.
As Haiti continues to recover and struggle, Haitians say behind a crumbling facade, there's resilience and faith. Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
The Diocese of Brooklyn is holding a memorial mass Wednesday in honor of the earthquake anniversary. The liturgy, which is open to everyone, will be at Sacred Heart Church in Cambria Heights, Queens. Ahead of the mass, the community will come together to talk about the disaster as well as hear messages from local officials. The church has one of the biggest Haitian communities in the diocese and has been open all day Wednesday for people to reflect and pray. The Tablet newspaper will have full coverage of the anniversary mass. Be sure to log on to thetablet.org for the full report.
It was very traumatic. The hospitals were filled to the brim. We were sending down.
In honor of the anniversary, Net TV will be airing a special documentary about the aftermath of the earthquake in Haiti. The Knights of Columbus film called Unbreakable, a story of hope and healing in Haiti, tells the amazing story of children who not only recovered physically from the quake, but also helped to recast the perception of the disabled within the country. To watch the full film, just stay right here. The movie, again called Unbreakable, a story of hope and healing in Haiti, will air at 8 p.m. Wednesday on Net TV. More than 100 people gathered in the Bronx for a candlelight vigil for the victims of that apartment building fire that killed 17 people, including 8 children. The smoky fire also injured dozens. Some remain hospitalized in critical condition. New York State Attorney General Letitia James attended the Tuesday night vigil, vowing to get to the bottom of this fire. She told the crowd there's a lesson to be learned about the neglect of government and a lesson to be learned about why this continues to happen in this corner of the Bronx, which has a large population of people of color. The cause of the fire that started in a third-floor apartment had been blamed on a space heater. The FDNY now says multiple space heaters had been running for days in that apartment. Firefighters reportedly made the discovery as they sifted through rubble of the duplex apartment in the 19-story building. 2 faulty doors that didn't automatically close, one in the duplex and another on the 15th floor, allowed smoke to quickly pour into hallways and stairwells. A couple that survived the deadly fire has filed a $1 billion lawsuit against the building's owners and management. The suit claims that landlords knew of defective conditions at the high-rise and failed to properly maintain it. The negligence lawsuit was filed on behalf of Rosa Reyes and Felix Martinez, who say they suffered serious injuries. The lawsuit is also seeking class action status. Officials have released the names of all 17 people who died in that Bronx fire. The victims include 8 children ranging from 2 to 12 years old. The oldest victim was a 50-year-old mother. All of the victims died of smoke inhalation. The medical examiner's office has begun releasing some of those dead to funeral homes. Catholic Charities Archdiocese of New York is currently trying to help these families both short and long term. You can go to CatholicCharitiesNY.org to donate to their efforts. And if you or someone you know is a victim of that Bronx fire and needs help, you could contact Catholic Charities on either their helpline 888-744-7900 or go to CatholicCharitiesNY.org/findhelp. A wanted ex-con who stole more than $2,000 of merchandise by knife point had his charges reduced thanks to new policies by Manhattan's district attorney. DA Alvin Briggs' new rules make prosecutors stop seeking prison sentences for hordes of criminals, as well as downgrade felony charges in cases including armed robbery and drug dealing. In this latest case, the suspect's charges dropped from first-degree robbery and criminal possession of a weapon to 2 counts of petty larceny and related low-level offenses. Because of this, he was able to be released without bail. As COVID-19 hospitalizations rates surge across the country, the American Red Cross and other groups say the U.S. blood supply is dangerously low. Mandy Gaither has more on what's causing the supplies to be depleted and how you can help.
A new record high in the U.S. More COVID-19 hospitalizations than at any other point in the pandemic. And as those in healthcare scramble to care for these patients, another danger lurks: dangerously low life-saving blood supplies.
The crisis is the worst we've seen in over a decade.
The American Red Cross says several factors, including surging COVID-19 cases, severe winter storms, declines in donor turnout, blood drive cancellations, and staffing problems have all led to shortages across the U.S.
We are challenged to collect enough blood to meet hospital needs, and sometimes up to 25% of a hospital's need might not be met.
Some blood centers across the country reporting less than a day's supply of certain types of blood, and major surgeries for some patients to be postponed.
We encourage everyone who is healthy and feeling well to roll up their sleeves and make an appointment. We require masks of all of our staff and our donors and anyone associated with a blood drive, so the donation process is very safe.
I'm Mandy Gaither.
The New York Blood Center is asking donors of all blood types, but especially type O, to make an appointment now to give in the weeks ahead. If you're interested in donating, you can find a blood drive close to you or make an appointment online at donate.nybc.org, or you can call 800-933-2566. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is asking the White House for help with COVID relief. Hochul is requesting federal aid from the Biden administration for New York's rent relief program. This after Hochul said she'll let the state's eviction moratorium expire this Saturday, January 15th. The moratorium prevented landlords from evicting tenants who've claimed financial hardship due to the pandemic.
Hoy quiero rezar por todas ellas y por sus familias. Debemos recuperar el sentido del trabajo como elemento esencial que dignifica al hombre y coopera a su santificación.
The Holy Father prayed for the unemployed during his Wednesday general audience. Pope Francis calling work an essential part of human life and something that can help make us feel useful. Proof of vaccination will be useful if you plan to visit the Vatican anytime soon. The city-state has updated its rules to stop the spread of COVID. It's now requiring all of its employees and most visitors to have what's called a super green pass, which certifies that they are either vaccinated or recently recovered from the disease. If employees don't have it, they can't work and won't get paid. The Senate is expected to take up voting rights in the coming days, so President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris went to Georgia to make a push for it, but they face an uphill battle to get it done. President Biden and Vice President Harris using the bully pulpit from Atlanta to push voting rights.
Pass the Freedom to Vote Act. Pass it now.
Speaking in the former district of the late congressman and champion of voting rights, John Lewis, Biden argues the nation is at a turning point.
It's about all of us. It's about the people. It's about America. Hear me plainly. The battle for the soul of America is not over.
The president also pushing to change filibuster rules in the Senate, something he needs to help get the rest of his agenda passed.
Today, I'm making it clear, to protect our democracy, I support changing the Senate rules, whichever way they need to be changed to prevent a minority of senators from blocking action on voting rights.
Nearly all Republicans and even some Democrats disagree.
The filibuster is what makes the Senate hopefully work when it's supposed to work.
There is mounting pressure for the Biden administration and Congress to pass voting rights legislation. Voting rights activists boycotting Biden and Harris's visit to Atlanta, saying now is not the time for a speech, it's time for action.
It is important to recognize the significance of this moment and how frustrated those of us who have been working diligently on the ground after election, and here we are a year later and they're still not voting rights.
Current rules in the Senate require 60 votes to advance most legislation, and since Democrats have a 50-50 majority with Vice President Harris to break ties, they don't have the 60 votes needed. The body of former Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid lies in state Wednesday in the Capitol Rotunda. His former congressional colleagues, including Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, paid tribute to the senator from Nevada. He was remembered as a political force and a pragmatic deal-maker. Reid, who had been treated for pancreatic cancer, died last month at the age of 82. There's a lot more news headed your way.
It was an insanely, miracle situation.
A medical helicopter crashes in front of a church and all aboard, including an infant, miraculously survived. The UN launches one of its largest appeals in response to the growing humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, where 1 million children are facing starvation. And Catholics in Kazakhstan joined together in prayer for the victims of a deadly government crackdown on street protests.
I feel very grateful right now. We're holding each other tighter. We're just thankful that at any moment life could be over, and yet, God protected us.
A family thanking God after scrambling for their lives in an incident that officials are calling a miracle. A medical helicopter dropped from the sky just outside of Philadelphia on Tuesday. It was heading to a children's hospital with 3 adults and a baby on board when it crash landed right outside Drexel Hill United Methodist Church. But as Alicia Reid reports, no one died in this miraculous chopper crash.
A medical chopper crumpled like paper.
It was an insanely, miracle situation.
Neighbors heard the loud crash early this afternoon and came running to see what happened.
It's crazy to see how almost perfect of a landing it is. You know, no wires are hit, no buildings hit, and everybody's all right.
The James family was out running errands and say their car pulled up right next to Drexel Hill United Methodist Church when they saw the medical chopper descending.
See the tail of it kind of like swinging like this. And so then it's coming there. So I put my car in reverse, slammed on it on the gas, reversed backwards, and then it hit.
They escaped without injury, with a lot of debris on their windshield from the heavy wind and crash.
Then there was a lot of jet fuel coming out, and then we saw a little bit of fire inside of the actual thing, but not a lot of fire. It was just mostly smoke like billowing out of the actual helicopter.
They're holding each other just a little tighter tonight after believing they escaped death.
We feel very grateful right now. We're holding each other tighter. We're just thankful that at any moment life could be over, and yet, you know, God protected us.
Counting their luck, neighbors are also showing respect to the pilot.
It's amazing. I use the term miracle lightly, but it is almost like a miracle. You know, it's awesome to see that, and glad everybody's all right. And definitely the pilot, you know, and I know they're trained to be in those sort of situations, and it's great to see something like this, you know, where everybody comes out all right.
That was Reid reporting. While everyone survived, the helicopter pilot was seriously injured. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating the cause of that crash. An update now on the deadly inferno that killed 12 people, including 9 children in Philadelphia last week. According to the city's fire commissioner, it most likely sparked when a Christmas tree was set on fire. A lighter was located near the tree. While investigators are still trying to determine who lit it on fire, they say a 5-year-old boy was the only person on the second floor where the tree and lighter were found when the fire broke out.
We are left with the words of that 5-year-old child, that traumatized 5-year-old child, to help us understand how the lighter and the tree came together with tragic consequences.
Officials say the duplex was owned by the Philadelphia Housing Authority and that none of the 6 smoke alarms found in the unit were working. Catholics joined together in prayer Monday for the victims of the government crackdown in Kazakhstan. Local bishops in the country inviting all priests to celebrate special masses for 160 people killed during last week's protests. Kazakhstan was plunged into disarray following a spike in fuel prices in early January. This quickly turned into anti-government protests, which became so brutal the country's president declared a state of emergency. The bishops say they will continue to pray for an early resolution and an establishment of peace and prosperity. Meantime, Catholics in Afghanistan are still waiting for their visas. After the U.S. left the country last August, thousands were affected by the resulting turmoil. One family of 5 has been waiting at a refugee camp in the United Arab Emirates, stuck because the Department of Homeland Security is overburdened due to enormous challenges on the U.S. southern border and trying to help tens of thousands of Afghan refugees. The UN is launching its largest ever single-country humanitarian effort in response to a growing crisis in Afghanistan. Half of the country's population is facing acute hunger, with 1 million children heading for starvation. Arwa Damon has more on the story from Istanbul.
Among the biggest tragedies that is Afghanistan's story is perhaps the reality that this very situation, this level of such a dire humanitarian catastrophe, could have been avoided. It's worth remembering that even before the fall of the Taliban, Afghanistan was a country whose population, about 50% of its population, lived below the poverty line. It had just emerged from the worst drought in the last 3 decades, heavily hitting its agricultural sector, its own food stocks, and then of course its economy was already in a dire situation. And then you had the chaotic US-NATO withdrawal, the Taliban takeover of Kabul, the freezing of Afghanistan's assets, billions of dollars of them, and the effective evaporation of international assistance and crucial, much-needed development aid. Prior to the Taliban takeover, around 80% of Afghanistan's budget was funded by the United States and other Western nations. All of that gone. And now the country has no means, no ability to try to assist its own people. Humanitarian organizations have put out this call for $4.4 billion, laying out a very detailed plan to address everything from providing food to winterization programs to education to child and women protection. And they are also providing assurances that this money will go directly to the beneficiaries, that will not fall in the Taliban's hands. And right now, so many are saying that Afghanistan is in such a critical situation that the world cannot afford to turn away. According to the head of one of the leading international aid organizations, at this very moment, around 9 million people in Afghanistan are on the brink of starvation.
That was Arwa Damon reporting. The U.S. is sending $308 million to Afghanistan to help ease the hunger crisis. Still to come on Currents News. After nearly 50 years as a priest in the Diocese of Brooklyn, Monsignor Ronald Moreno is retiring. A look back at his rich legacy. And Pope Francis popped in at a Rome record store. We'll tell you the reason behind his unannounced visit. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. After nearly 50 years as a priest in the Brooklyn Diocese, Monsignor Ronald Moreno is retiring. Monsignor Moreno has been a huge immigrant advocate since the mid-1980s, developing a system to help immigrants gather documentation for amnesty. It was his system that relied on specially trained volunteers to not only help get the paperwork, but rehearse the interview process conducted by immigration officials that led to Brooklyn having the second largest amount of processed immigrants in the amnesty system. If you'd like to read more about Monsignor Moreno and the amazing work he's done in the diocese, you could pick up the paper at your local church, or if you'd like to subscribe to the tablet and get it delivered straight to your mailbox, just go to thetablet.org. Some of you might already know that Pope Francis is a huge lover of music. He grew up listening to the opera on the radio and thinks Mozart lifts you to God. But as Currents News' Justin McClellan reports, it still came as a shock to see the 85-year-old pontiff coming out of a record shop in Rome late Tuesday night.
Well, it was late afternoon here in Rome when a white Fiat 500 pulled up here in front of this record store to drop off an unexpected visitor.
Just next to the Pantheon sits this unassuming record shop in the center of Rome. Yet among its clientele is the head of the Catholic Church. Pope Francis surprised the shop with an impromptu visit to say hello to some old friends.
Santo Padre!
He didn't come to buy any records. He just came to bless the store. He's been a customer of ours for a long time, and he came to see us.
Tiziana Esposito is the shop owner's daughter. She says the Pope has been coming into their store since he was Archbishop Jorge Bergoglio of Buenos Aires and continued coming back as a cardinal during his trips to Rome.
It was really exciting. I don't know how to describe it. To see the Pope set foot in the store was so powerful. It was so emotional having seen him before and then seeing him now.
The store sells records of all genres and ages, but over the years, Pope Francis has remained loyal to his personal taste in music.
Just classical music. He listens to classical music. He's particularly passionate about opera and great vocalists.
It seems Pope Francis's days of buying records are behind him, as the store owners gave him a box of classical music CDs as a gift. A sign that even for a modern pope, you just can't beat the classics.
While Tiziana says it was exciting to see the Pope walk into her store, she says the best part of it all was being able to see an old friend again. From Rome, Justin McClellan, Currents News.
Must be very exciting. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.